Hello, my happy readers. It's Shed Time Stories with me, Issy. Are you ready to share a new story? I have chosen a book full of hopes and dreams. The title is A Mole in One. If you have this book at home, you can read along with me. The author, the person who has written this story, is Therese Lynch. And the illustrator, the person who has drawn all the pictures, is Xiao. Now we're going to meet a little mole called Fergus. But being little does not stop him having big hopes and dreams and a passion for golf. Shall we read and find out what happens? Aim right, Fergus shouted. He knew the golfer would miss. The golfer didn't notice Fergus. Humans only noticed moles when moles became a problem. At sunset, Fergus scurried home to his cosy burrow. He did not want to cross paths with the grouchy greenskeeper. His stompy boots made Fergus shiver. Brrr. Fergus lived with his mama and Papa Mole and his brothers, twins Declan and Duncan. Fergus loved his home, but his family didn't understand him or the magical game of golf. Fergus bounded through the door. Papa Mole looked up and raised his bushy eyebrows. "Official golfing attire," said Fergus proudly. Mama Mole planted a soft kiss on his nose. The twins laughed and pulled Fergus's cap down over his eyes. "Why don't you try digging on the course, wee Fergus?" teased Declan. "Like a real mole," Duncan added. Fergus was quiet. Grubs were his favourite, but tonight he didn't feel like eating. That night, like most nights, Fergus dreamed of the perfect shot. Whack! The ball soared to the freshly mowed green. Bounce, bounce. The sound of the alarm clock jolted Fergus right out of bed. Ignoring his brother's words, he headed to the golf course. He was determined to clobber that ball, but he'd have to hurry. Today was the big tournament. The golfers were coming. Behind an oak tree, Fergus and his best friend, Frances Fox, teed up the ball. Although much larger than him, Frances never made Fergus feel small. "4!" Fergus yelled and swung with all his might. Thwack! Ouch! Frances picked up Fergus by the velvety scruff of his neck. "Persist," she said gently. Frustrated, Fergus tried something he'd seen humans do. Frances shook her head disapprovingly. "Let's try this," Fergus urged. Frances placed him into a slingshot. Boing! "Holy moly!" Fergus shrieked as he zoomed through the air and landed in a heap of trouble. "We meet at last," snarled the greenskeeper. And the race was on. Frances led the greenskeeper away. Fergus ran as fast as his little legs could go and dove headfirst into a mole hole. Fergus popped out at the 18th hole near the pond. Mama Mole often warned her sons not to dig there. Moles are not particularly strong swimmers. Phew, he sighed and looked around. Right in front of him was his favourite golfer. But something else caught Fergus's eye. A bump in the grass that only someone tiny could see. He recognized his brother's work, and it was dreadful. Fergus crept closer and closer. "Eek! A mouse!" a lady shrieked and fainted. "Where?" wondered Fergus. He hardly ever saw mice on the course. He took another peek. The ball would surely break hard left. That was his last thought before whoosh! Fergus was scooped up. "That is no mouse. That is far worse," explained the golfer. "That, ladies and gentlemen, is a dastardly mole. Diggers," continued the golfer, "have no place on the golf course." Fergus squirmed in his tight grip. "How can I play golf if the holes have moles?" the golfer asked the crowd. To himself he murmured, "If I don't make this putt, I'm doomed." Fergus met the golfer's eyes. For a long moment, they stared. The golfer examined the tiny mole, still wearing his best golfing attire. The golfer's eyes softened. His grip loosened. A slight smile formed on his lips. Fergus saw his chance. He glanced toward the ball and tilted his head. The golfer wondered aloud. He gently placed Fergus on his shoulder. "What is it, little chap?" he whispered to Fergus. "Aim right, huh, Mr. Mole?" Fergus proudly puffed his chest. His papa was the only Mr. Mole he'd ever known. Fergus nodded excitedly. The golfer winked. Fergus winked back. A tricky move given the smallness of his eyes. He hoped it looked right. The golfer turned his putter slightly to the right. Fergus let out a low whistle. "More?" the golfer questioned. Fergus bowed. As the golfer hit the ball way right, Fergus felt his tummy roll. Glad he skipped the grubs the night before, he held his breath. The crowd was silent. Fergus noticed Frances peeking out from the tall grass. She smiled and nodded at him. At that moment, Fergus no longer needed a hole-in-one or to be a professional golfer. He simply loved the game, and that was enough. The ball slowly curled toward the cup. The greenskeeper raised his arms in excitement. The crowd gasped. Fergus didn't gasp or even watch. He knew the ball would break left and sink into the cup like he'd always dreamed. And so it did. Fergus's Caddy School. Clothing not optional. What a sweet and tender story that was. Little Fergus did have his hopes and dreams, and he stuck to them, no matter how much his brothers teased him. Fergus followed his passion, which was golf, not digging like the rest of his family. I hope you've enjoyed this Shed Time story, and if you want to, you can like, share, follow and subscribe to Shed Time Stories. Then you'll be ready for the next book we can share together. Bye-bye.